I'm going to kick things off and get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this really special webinar today with Dr. Marlena Corcoran, class of 84. We're so excited to discuss MBA or Masters in Business, why, when, and how as part of our Global Alumni Career Initiative. My name is Alexia Benros, and I'm the Career Network Coordinator for the Office of Alumni Relations, and I sit on the Career and Life Design team. The Career and Life Design programs in the Brown Office of Alumni Relations is comprised of career mentoring opportunities to build our Brunonian communities. And the three pillars of career and life design include early engagement, experimental engagement, and life after graduation. Through this series, we've really touched on all three, and today, especially life after graduation. Through workshops and one-on-one coaching and innovative resources, we empower alumni to design their lives by building valuable networks and making connections with employers and alumni to alumni, and to stay current with a diverse array of possibilities, fostering a sense of purpose and direction. Today, Dr. Corcoran will share up-to-the-minute tips for the Brown Global Alumni Career Initiative. The information we discuss today will not include guidelines and deadlines, specific requirements for schools or programs, but truly sharing guidance and expertise on navigating this process. As the founder of Athena Mentor, International University Admissions Counseling, Dr. Corcoran brings over 20 years of experience to our discussion of which graduate business degree might be right for you and how to apply successfully to some of the top programs in the US and abroad. Dr. Corcoran served as the BASC Regional Director for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and represented the interests of the international and graduate alumni on the Board of Governors of the Brown Alumni Association. She received a Spotlight Award for her work on behalf of the international student community at Brown. Dr. Corcoran founded Athena Mentor, International University Admissions Counseling, located in Munich and New York, 20 years ago to help young people discover who they are and what they really care about, and present themselves with confidence, enthusiasm, and success to the most selective colleges and MBA programs in the world. Marlena's PhD is from Brown University, and she has held visiting research appointments at Harvard, Princeton, Oxford, and the CNRS Paris. As a volunteer, she represented international students on the Board of Governors for the Brown Alumni Association and served on the Brown Interview Program as Regional Director for Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Dr. Corcoran has spoken at Princeton and Cornell Clubs of New York and presented on industry podcasts on topics ranging from early career business education to how to tell the Ivies apart. Her advice has been published on the HBR Ascend. Dr. Corcoran is also a member of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. She has a special interest in the integration of traditional university education and preparation for business leadership. And we are so excited to have you here today, Marlena. Thank you so much for volunteering your time and expertise to share with our international community. I will hand things over to you.
Thank you so much, Alexia, and it's great to be, as it were, back at Brown. So welcome all of you to MBA, Why, When, and How. In discussing why, I'll present some significant shifts in what's really going on at business schools today that may help you decide whether business school is right for you. And some of you may find this news so exciting that you'll say, how soon can I go? And that's our section, when. Finally, I'll discuss how. I'll briefly go through the parts of an application and give you tips on how you can find the MBA or business program that's right for you. And you'll find that the why is connected to the when, and the when is connected to the how. So first, why? There are good reasons, many, to apply for an MBA, but among them are flexibility. An MBA is arguably the most flexible degree you can get today. The income is first and foremost in the minds of many people. And to find out just what post-graduation income is, I recommend that you look at, for example, the Financial Times for information. Independence is critical to many people, especially young people today. And I'm sure that at Brown, you've heard a lot about entrepreneurship, and an MBA gives you a certain amount of independence. However, the main career paths of MBA graduates are these: consulting, entrepreneurship, and tech. And you can check that for any particular MBA program. What do their graduates do after graduation? So today I'd like to ask you what you think of when you think of business school, because many people think this. Now, this person is kind of a caricature of what people think of as an MBA, someone in business. But I'd like to ask you to consider this, which may sound a little more familiar to Brown people. This is from a research paper. Americans overestimate the frequency of political debate. This misconception correlates with loss of hope in the future of the country. Most Americans debate important issues ranging from reproductive rights to vaccination with close friends and family. Most of these conversations don't happen online. Rather than relying on sources that may have a vested interest in portraying debates as relentless and bitter, Americans should use their own experience to guide their views on the current state of political debate. Alexia, do you have those slides? Have you got the key takeaways up for people to read, and the picture of our stereotypical business person?
Sure.
Perhaps,
Yeah, from the
perhaps you
previous
should.
slide.
Well, perhaps you could catch up with us. Have you gone through to the image of the caricature of the business school person?
Yes, we have.
Okay, because I can't see quite the slides that you have. All right, so those key takeaways may sound like Brunonian ideals, but where do they come from? That's a research paper from Columbia Business School. If you would show the pictures of the two researchers there, Alexia, thank you.
Mhm.
And I have heard a presentation by Professor Iyengar at my last visit to an AGAC conference at Columbia. That's the Association of International Graduate Admissions Counselor. And yes, Professor Iyengar is blind. She led a workshop at that conference, and the workshop was on creativity. It was amazing and demonstrated that each of us is more creative than we may think. And next, Alexia, let's consider this mission statement.
Mhm.
Educating leaders for business and society. You care about the world. You want to make a difference in the big problems afflicting people's lives, like climate change, systemic racism, and the pandemic response, while launching a rewarding career. Combining seemingly incompatible goals and perspectives, ideas, people, needs, industries is at the heart of our mission of educating leaders for business and society. In fact, we see this act of combining as the essential skill you will need to become a leader who improves lives. Now, notice the concerns there: climate change, systemic racism, pandemic response. These could be the concerns of people at Brown College. However, next slide, Alexia. This is the Yale School of Management speaking. That's their mission. And the last time I attended a conference at the Yale Business School, the assistant dean of MBA admissions walked into the auditorium full of admissions consultants like myself and said, Marlena Corcoran and I have something in common. And my colleagues' heads swiveled. He said, we both majored in English at Brown. Next slide. So, for those of you involved in the Brown Group Careers for the Common Good, I hope I've persuaded you that an MBA just might be right for you, even if you have always thought you weren't the business school type. So, Alexia, I'd like to ask you now, have you launched the poll for what people's concerns are?
Yep. So I have launched our poll. We would invite everyone to participate, sharing, the stage you're at in your career, what program you might be interested in, or if you're not sure, and what field of business interests you. As we mentioned, finance, consulting, tech, entrepreneurship, nonprofit, I'm not sure. I see that a lot of folks are participating. I'd love to see some of the percentages change. So we do have 25% still in undergrad, 40% for 5 years or less out of school, and 20% for 10 years or less out of school, as well as mainly interested in an MBA program, and 40% are unsure. In terms of field of business that our audience is most interested in, we have 40% are interested in tech and 60% interested in entrepreneurship. I want to thank everyone for participating, and I'm going to go ahead and close our poll. Thank you so much, Marlena.
Thank you for telling me what your interests are, and I will try to address those as we continue. I hope that I have shared with you some of the attractions of a classic MBA, but some of you may be thinking in somewhat different terms. Those of you interested in tech in particular, or just starting out, as some of you are still in college. Alexia, could we have the next slide? What if I'm not ready for an MBA? You know that you want to do something, but it might not be a classic MBA. That, after all, requires a substantial commitment in time and money and a shift in perspective. So, next, Alexia. What about a specialized master's? Some of you have heard about these degrees that typically take 1 year rather than two, and many such programs will take applicants right out of college. So, what's the difference between an MBA and a specialized master's in business? I once summed it up like this, Alexia. Someone with a master's ends up working for someone with an MBA. And since that sort of says it all, it was quoted by the British Broadcasting Company when they asked this question. Next, but that's not necessarily bad. You may want to work in a field that requires very deep, specialized training. And some of those, next slide, please, are a master's in finance, a master's in asset management, a master's in supply chain management, or a master's in data science. Those are careers where that deep specialized training is what you need. You don't need the entire overview of how to run a company. And if you're at the very beginning of your career, next, you may be most interested in a master's in management. Now, I've asked on this slide to MIM or not to MIM. The master's in management degree is extremely popular in Europe. I would say that the popularity of this might have something to do with the shift some years ago to a 3-year bachelor program, especially where I live in Germany, at the end of which people are still wondering, well, what are they going to do? And employers look for that master's in management degree. It can help you get a first job that job is unlikely to be your last job. And so while I do sense the appeal of this degree in getting a first job, I would caution you that some traditional MBA programs are hesitant to admit people who already have one degree in business. Similarly, if you're looking at a 1 year master's program, thinking that sounds like enough to me, I can apply when I'm in college, um, look ahead. You may find yourself wanting a more traditional MBA later, and you don't want to close certain future doors by opening this immediate door. So that's a very individual consideration. Next, Alexia, is when. When to apply for your MBA. Next slide. And next slide. The answer is when you've come far enough to know you have a significant goal you cannot reach without an MBA. And if you look ahead to the types of essays you'll be asked to write as part of your education, your application, you'll be asked about your goal and why you need an MBA to reach that goal, and also why you need it now. So I would say you can't really go into an MBA application uh, because you don't know what else to do after college. Need a reason to go. So not only is it a push factor from your past, it should be a pull factor from future you. Next, please. You need a goal, and not only a goal, you need a path. You need to show the MBA admissions committee how you're going to get to that goal. And in short, that's why you need experience. Next, Alexia. And on average, this means 5 years of work experience. That's enough to get you, and that's the point of entry. That's enough that you've worked long enough that you've reached a certain point where you feel you can't get farther without this training. So that may be a little longer than some of you on the call may have thought. But the other reason you need experience is in order to contribute to your class. The method of education at business school is largely teamwork and participation. So you need to show the committee you will bring something to your cohort. Next, please. Yes, there are early career MBAs. I've cautioned you about some of them, and now let's discuss the attractive ones. The early career MBAs aren't usually something you do right out of college. They usually involve deferred enrollment. So you get accepted when you're still in college or still in graduate school. And as a PhD myself, I say this specifically to those of you who are in graduate school. Look into this before you graduate. The deferred enrollment programs give you a chance to get that valuable work experience, valuable both to you and to your MBA classmates, before you start the program. So, what would be some of those very popular programs from top universities and top MBA programs? Next, Alexia. And I put this side in blue just to make sure we're still awake and to show you some of the highlights of schools that offer deferred enrollment programs. And you'll see they are some of the very top business programs in the United States. So what do you need to get into these programs? Next slide, Alexia. You need time to demonstrate leadership. Leadership is the key term in MBA applications, and it's what people expect and employers expect of MBA graduates. Now, you can start when you're in college. It's not only about titles, it's about a habit of action. And you can read a lot about leadership on the websites of the schools themselves. Next, how? How do you successfully apply? How? Next slide. How do you show leadership? As I said, it's not only a title. I was president of this, I was leader of the other thing. It's about taking initiative to solve a problem. You identify the problem, you identify the solution, you gather other people together and motivate them to work with you. That's leadership. And it can just as well be in a volunteer position as in your field of employment. Now, going quickly through some of the next slides. I'm sorry, Violet, that's you. The GMAT or GRE is critical. Please do it now. I haven't mentioned yet quantitative skills, but they are critical in an MBA program. You need to show the committee that you can keep up with the math. You don't want to let down your teammates if you can't. So especially if you're in the humanities. Brush up on your math, maybe take a crash course in studying for the GRE so that you are as competitive on the quantitative side as on the qualitative side. Violet, next. There are essays required. They usually involve your goals, as I said, personal traits, and increasingly in this age of AI, videos to demonstrate that you are who you say you are. Next, interviews. And similarly there, you will be asked about what you wrote about and asked to demonstrate that you are the person you claim to be. Next, the second main topic I'd like to stress today, which is how to choose programs. Because you may say, well, this all sounds very exciting, but I don't know where to start figuring out what is the right program for me. Next, how to use rankings. And notice that I don't just say rankings. They will tell you everything. Well, you will notice that different rankings put different schools in different orders. That's because they use different criteria to establish their ranking. So if you look at the Financial Times, if you look at another ranking, look first at what are the criteria. Now, I'll pick on the Financial Times again. You can sort the list. You can filter the list according to what matters most to you among the criteria that were used to establish this ranking. So maybe one of those criteria hardly matters to you. Maybe something like a carbon footprint matters a whole lot, or percentage of women in the class, or exit salary. Whatever is the criterion that's number one for you, filter the results and look at what these people who are very experienced and have been assessing programs for years, what do they think is important? Because the best school for you may not be the best school for somebody else. Next, we have, once again, leadership. So think of any way that you can, including, may I suggest, service to Brown, to document and demonstrate leadership, especially in a field that might matter to you. Next, we have the M7. Violet, if you could catch up with the M7 slide. This is a group of business schools that function in prestige, somewhat like the Ivy League at the college level. These are schools that they communicate with one another. They almost always figure at the top of the rankings. If you really don't know where to start, start with these. You're coming from a school that offered you an excellent education at Brown, so you'd probably like to continue at a similar level. Next, some leading non-US schools, because I know that some of you are coming from outside the United States or envision a global career. The London Business School, in the heart of what they call the city, is renowned for finance and for its international outlook. If you'd like a taste of traditional British education, the business schools at Cambridge Judge and Oxford Said, those are the names of the schools. They are located within the academic structure of their universities, although in particular, I'm thinking of Cambridge Judge. They have a wonderful modern building of their own, and they are in a position to integrate the business school uh, savvy with the academic advances. And that's something that, in my mind, really recommends a business school that is part of a larger university. Imperial is in London and particularly strong in technology. In France, with a satellite campus in Singapore, we have INSEAD, which is a European business school on an American model. Next, don't underestimate the prestige of what might be considered a regional school. Now, I say regional with a smile because India and China are rather large regions. But in those countries, the prestige of the Indian Institutes of Management or the China European International Business School in China, their prestige is enormous. So if you are considering doing business with those countries or locating in those countries, similarly, St. Gallen in Switzerland, I live in Munich. It's a tremendously respected school with a great network in the German-speaking world. Next, you need to do your research. It's up to you to look beyond the name of the school into what really goes on there. Is it the right teaching style for you? Is it the right network for you? How do you do this? Next, study the websites. They put so much information online that it's astonishing to me when a new client I might be working with says, well, they're intent on going to Harvard Business School. Why? Because it's Harvard. You need a little more fine-grained reason than that. The website will also give you not only instructions or suggestions on what to be thinking about as you write the essay or essays, but they schedule events and they would like to see you at those events. Many of them these days are online, so you really have no excuse not to go. And they often have specialized events for example, international students. Finally, talk to students and alumni. The schools are assuming that you are doing this. So reach out. It may feel a little intimidating, but there are on most of the school's websites offers. Current students who offer to speak to you. For example, at Cornell Tech, you can look up online, pick someone who seems to have interests similar to yours or a background similar to yours, contact that person. They volunteered for this. Next, the schools want to talk to you. So you may find ways to write them online. Now, a word of caution here. Don't write to them and make it obvious that you haven't done your research. Don't ask a question that could be answered on the website. But some schools even offer a consultation with you. It's called a CV review. For that, of course, you need to have perfected your CV. Next, I would suggest you begin with the London Business School resume template. They put it right online. And if you haven't written a resume yet, you'll soon find out it takes forever. So do it now. MIT Sloan, their business school, has a wonderful series of videos explaining their concerns, which they hope will be your concerns as well, and how to go about completing their rather distinctive application. At Columbia Business School, there's an entire society of students who are dedicated to reaching out to prospective students. They're very friendly. They come from all sorts of business interests, so that again, you can ask to team up with someone who is going into entrepreneurship, going into technology, and ask them things that another student would know. How do you find an apartment in the crowded real estate market of the Upper West Side in Manhattan? They'll answer questions like that, as well as questions about their academic preparation at their school. Next slide, I'll recommend some free resources to you. The Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants.org, that's agac.org. Their website is due to be refreshed in November, but even now you can find answers to questions like, what if I'm an international student, international worker, and my supervisor is reluctant to write my letter of recommendation because they're concerned that English is not their native language? Or help, as I put it in the title of an article I wrote recently, help. My supervisor says he's too busy to write my letter of recommendation. This is more common than you may think, and the answer is not what your supervisor may think, namely that you're supposed to write the letter and he'll sign it. So for answers to questions like this, I recommend agac.org. It's also a place to find a reputable consultant to hire to help you with your applications. These are people who adhere to a certain ethical standard, or else they're not accepted as members of AGAC. Clear Admit is a fantastic resource, and they are particularly strong in compiling every year a, um, a set of information about most MBA programs. So if you want a summary of, for example, how is the Berkeley program different from the Stanford program? You can find that information on Clear Admit. Next, if you'd like to learn more from me, I write regularly in the field of international business education at all levels, and I publish those articles on Forbes.com. Alexia, you might put my Forbes link there if you have it. If you Google Marlena Corcoran, Forbes.com, you'll get a list of all of the articles that I have written in the past year, and you're likely to find that some of them answer your questions about why, when, and how to apply to business school. And finally, on LinkedIn. I write from time to time on LinkedIn. I always announce on LinkedIn when I have published a new article on Forbes.com. And I'm very happy to connect with any of you on LinkedIn. I unfortunately cannot answer personal questions, but if you are interested in working with someone to help you with your business school applications, you can contact me on LinkedIn. I do both individual work with clients, and I'm about to start a group cohort at a very attractive financial investment. If you're applying this year, do get in touch with me about that right away. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am happy to answer some questions now. I know that Alexia has been looking for them in the chat, or if you'd like to ask those questions now, I'm happy to see how I can help you on your path to business school.
Thank you so much, Marlena. I would invite anyone with questions if they would like to unmute and feel comfortable asking questions. We'll also be monitoring the chat. I'm going to kick things off. Marlena, you've taught a series of sessions on navigating the MBA in Brown and other institutions. And what questions do you hear most frequently?
I think that the issue that comes up most frequently is when to start thinking about an MBA and how long does it take to apply. Some people think, well, I can fill out the application this weekend. Good luck with that because you're not giving yourself enough time to do the kinds of things I talked about in this presentation, namely get to know the school by contacting students and alumni so that when the school asks you, how did you learn about us? You have something to say. You're also not giving yourself a chance to establish a track record in leadership, as well as the sorts of promotions on the job that many people think of as their qualifications for admission. So I would say the main issue that comes up is not giving yourself enough time.
Great. Thank you so much for answering that question. Um, as an admissions counselor, how do you support students who are navigating student visas, and that process as they, look onward to continuing their academic journey?
International students are welcome at the top business schools around the world. So that's true not only for US schools, but UK schools, schools in Asia. These days, immigration is a difficult topic, and not only in the United States. Canada has been putting limits on immigration from India for the last couple of years. And again, those particulars change from month to month. It is the school that helps the student navigate the visa issue. This relates, however, to the last question I spoke to with regard to timing. If you are coming from outside the country to which you are applying, you must allow yourself significant time to get a visa. There are often visa backlogs these days. And that's why I highly recommend to international students who work with me and are applying to the US or the UK in particular to apply in what's called round one. Those deadlines are typically in September. They can even start late August and they end in early October. That's round one of MBA admissions. That gives both you and the school sufficient time to work out the visa issue before you're due on campus. It also gives you, as an international student, the best chance of getting financial aid from the school. Round two of MBA admissions, they're typically due in the month of January. Again, check your school. But that is often the largest round in terms of number of applications. Um, the general advice is apply when you are ready. But I would say if you're an international student, get ready so that you apply in round one. Round three is very difficult for international students because sometimes you just don't have the time to get the visa. A school that's on either list that I posted during my talk can help you a lot. The government knows those schools, so they can support you in your application for a visa.
Wonderful. We have a great question here in the chat. It reads, thank you so much for organizing this wonderful session. Dr. Corcoran, I'm considering pursuing a combined MBA and Master's in Education degree. This can also apply to anyone considering in a combined degree, as I'm passionate about both business and educational impact. In your experience, do you think it would be more advantageous to gain oops, sorry, my little icon is covering, to gain experience in the education sector and pursue a master's in education first, followed by an MBA later? Or would it be better to dive into a combined program straight away, even if I don't yet have extensive work experience? I'd love to hear your take on each path and how that might shape career opportunities and growth. Also, congratulations. How exciting, but it's a big one for you.
What a wonderful goal. Let me say that first. There are MBA programs that offer combined degrees. However, typically they are combined with other professional degrees like law or public policy. A famous one would be Harvard Business School and the Kennedy School of Government. You may not need the master's in education because, again, you may not need the entire survey of the field that you would get with a master's in education that presumably qualifies you to teach. I'm assuming that since you're interested in an MBA, you'd like to go into educational administration or government policy about education. You may find that a school like the Yale School of Management offers you sufficient freedom in choosing your electives that you can take the classes you would need in education as part of your MBA degree. I don't think this would work as well the other way around if you do a master's in education, which I think would typically be 1 year and take only a few classes in business school. So you'd have to look into particular schools for that. But I will again quote Rose Delmonico, that assistant dean of admissions at Yale School of Management, who told me directly and flat out, Marlena, I don't care if a student takes every single elective outside of the School of Management. And that might be you, Calvin. That is, instead of taking your electives in the business school in different areas of business, you could take your electives in education. But that's going to require very particular research into the conditions of the degree at that school. And of course, Columbia is another university that leaps to mind with a distinguished teachers college and a fantastic and very open-minded business school whose charismatic dean is totally committed to solving social problems through business organizations.
Well, thank you so much for that great question as well as that answer, Marlena. We have a couple more questions in the chat. Um, the first question is, if I am interested in a senior management role of a biotech startup, which degree would be more relevant? A PhD in protein engineering or an MBA in entrepreneurship?
The royal road to influence and success these days seems to be an undergraduate degree in engineering for the technical competence that you will need, or in your case, an undergraduate degree in um, biological science or biomedical engineering, whatever is your special concern, and then the full MBA program to learn the skills that it takes to bring those scientific breakthroughs to market. I'm not convinced that you need a PhD in biological sciences. That's a very different degree. It's a research degree. So I would look into that very carefully.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to check here in the chat to see if we have
One,
any additional
one more thought.
questions.
One more thought that for people who are already in graduate school, as I mentioned, look into programs that you can apply to right now before you leave graduate school. Some of those early career deferred enrollment, that was a slash there, either early career or deferred enrollment programs. Um, you too would be eligible if you are currently in graduate school. You would be treated like a college applicant. So, in line with my general advice to start soon and do a lot of research, um, be careful. Um, Start soon enough so that you know what your advantages are and what doors you might be closing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marlena. This has been such an impactful session for so many. Your insight has been so valuable to navigating this process. And it's been so special to be able to finish up this summer initiative with you and closing it out in such an impactful way. I will also say we're so thankful for you and this community, and this will not be the last session that we see with you. So we hope folks stay tuned as they continue to navigate this process. But thank you so much for your expertise in sharing that with the international community today.
You're very welcome. And again, for anyone who is interested in individual guidance or becoming part of a group cohort that I mentor, I urge you to get in touch with me through LinkedIn. I'd be very happy to hear from you.
Thank you. We actually have one final question, if we have a little bit of time. You shared so much with the Brown community. Can you share a little bit about why you chose Brown for your graduate studies, your PhD program?
Gladly. And I will also mention that there's a useful suggestion in the chat for future people. Someone mentioned she believes Stanford has a joint MA, MBA in Education and Business Administration. Thank you, Sylvia. And that's a great example of the importance of doing research for your particular needs. Now, I'd love to answer that question about why I chose Brown. I wanted to study modernism as a phenomenon, a very important cultural revolution that is 100 years old now. Um, World War I completely changed the world. of the 19th century and led to an outpouring of creativity in literature, in the arts, and even in thinking about what it is to be a person. That is, whether some classes of people were just born to be servants. As Virginia Woolf wrote, somewhere around, I think she said 1911, it might be 1914 when the war broke out, human nature changed. And I wanted to study that phenomenon as a whole rather than doing a typical English PhD, which would very sensibly have begun with Beowulf and Anglo-Saxon literature, marched step by step through the centuries, and ended in a clearly defined specialization in one period and one genre. Brown offered me that freedom, that flexibility, and even the chance to do 2 years of my graduate work in Paris at the École Normale Supérieure at a time when studies in literature and philosophy, in literary theory, were exploding in Paris. And that has remained one of the most formative periods of my life. And I will always be grateful to Brown.